team, it's Stacey, and I'm here to take you through an MSF class. So MSF stands for Mobility, Stability, and Flexibility. So the way that we're going to run this class is we're going to divide it into those three components. So your first section we're going to go through is all about mobility. So what we're going to do is 6 exercises, 30 seconds on each, and 3 rounds through. Our next section will then be on stability. So we're going to have the same thing, 6 exercises, 30 seconds each, and 3 rounds through. The last section on flexibility, we're still going to have 6 exercises, but we're going to be on that exercise for 45 seconds, then have 15 seconds to rest and transition into the next exercise, and only do 2 rounds through, okay? So once you've completed all 3 sections, the workout is complete, and hopefully by the end of this workout, you feel more mobile, you feel more stable, and you feel more flexible. All right, let's get into it. For our first mobility exercise, we're just going to work through some wrist figure 8s. So you're going to interlock your fingers together. Start by having them stacked on top of each other in front of you. And then we're going to make a big figure of 8. So trying to make that number going all the way around. And then just make sure that once you've done one direction, you're going to stop and you're going to go in the opposite direction. Okay, so just working through that wrist mobility to start off. Okay? Second mobility exercise, we're going to work on our shoulder mobility. So we're going to be making an E, Y, and an I. I'll demonstrate what that looks like sitting here, and then we're going to do it laying down, okay? So your E is out nice and wide with the elbows. Y, you just lift the arms up from there, and then I, bring it back together. And then you go in the reverse direction. So you go I, Y, E. Okay, I'm going to show you what that looks like on the ground, which is what we're going to do for the exercise. So, laying onto your stomach, start in the I position, arms overhead, go out to the Y, make the E. Then we start E, Y, I, Y, E, Y, I. Okay? For our third mobility exercise, we're going to go into a spinal roll. So we start in a downward dog and then we drop the hips almost as if you're kind of going into like a cobra pose. Okay, so I'll show you what that looks like. So start in the downward dog first. So have your wrists roughly in line with your shoulders onto the balls of your feet. Pike your hips up so you should feel a nice big stretch up the back of the legs in this downward dog pose, and then drop your hips all the way down as far as you can to lengthen out through the front of the body and your lower back. Then we pack it all the way back up, weight back into the heels, and drop it all the way back down. Okay? Our fourth mobility exercise, we're going to go into a deep lunge and do an arm rotation. Okay, so setting up on one side first, let's say our right leg. So I'm going to have ankle in line with our knee, back leg behind us, and then we're gonna push the weight forward so we're really opening out through the hip flexors. Then we're gonna have our left hand down on the ground. Right arm starts on the inside of your leg, and then you rotate it up to the ceiling, bring it all the way back down. Rotate it up to the ceiling, bring it all the way back down. And then just make sure you do your other leg. So bring the right leg back, left leg forward, right arm and left arm on the inside of the leg, then rotate left up, all the way down, rotate up, all the way down, up and down. For our fifth mobility exercise, we're going to go into a seated 90-90 hip internal and external rotation. Okay, so you can kind of start in a cross-legged and then just extend one leg forward. I've got my right leg here. What we're going to do, have your hands out for stability if you need. You're going to bring that right leg behind to also make that 90-90 with those legs. So it's like a little zigzag, and then bring it back in front of you. Okay, so it comes behind you, and then it comes in front of you, okay? And then just make sure you swap over to the other side. So one leg crossed in, my left leg is forward, we bring it behind us, make that 90, bring it in front of us, nice and long. So coming behind us, 90-90, and then in front of us. Our sixth mobility exercise is a rocking frog. So what you're going to do is you're going to set up in your frog position. So basically you want your knees out as wide as you can, feet flat on the ground, kind of on the arches of your feet, hands out in front of you for support. You're going to rock back towards your heels and then rock forward as far as you can, okay? So if you don't have much flexibility, that's totally fine. Just work within your range, but just keeping those legs open, you'll really feel this all throughout the groin, and we're just rocking forward, rocking back, okay? So, exercise 1 for the stability section is a tree pose with a side stretch. Now this does require a bit of balance, so if you do need, have a wall surface or structure for you to hold on to, but try your best to challenge your balance. If you come out of it and then reset, that's totally fine. Just go at your own ability, okay? So tree pose, you bring one foot to where your knee is. It's okay if it's not very high, just put it wherever you can. And then you're gonna bring your arms up together, and then you're going to stretch towards that leg, okay? Now it is a bit on the balance side, so try to reset your balance if you do come out of it. Just try to get back into it when you can, or come back to the center and then go back into the stretch as you need. And obviously, because it's on one side, make sure that you then do the other side as well as you go through. The second exercise for the stability section is a standing crunch with a clap. So this one's got a little bit of movement as well. So it's really going to test that stability to help you stabilize as you're moving, okay? So you're going to bring one leg up in front of you, just bent at about 90 degrees. Have your hands starting up nice and high, clap underneath, come back up, clap underneath, and come back up. Make sure you do the other leg, hands all the way up, crunch to clap, crunch to clap. Exercise for the stability section is going to be a single Romanian deadlift. So with this one, if you find that you can't do it with your leg hovering in the air, you can do a staggered stance, okay? I'll show you what that means towards the end, okay? So if you're doing your normal single deadlift, soft knees, balancing onto one leg, hinging down, keeping a nice long spine, just go down as far as you can, keeping that balance, and then hinge from the hips to come all the way up tall. Okay, and then you can either alternate legs and go straight onto the other side and come up tall, or you can stay on one side for half the set duration and then go to the other side. Now, like I said, if your balance is a bit poor, the staggered stance you can do, essentially start with your feet hip width apart, just lift one heel off the ground, and then you can still reach down and come up, and you'll still have that more weight distribution and balance trying to go into that one side. Going to be a curtsy lunge with a crunch. Now with your curtsy lunge, your leg is coming behind you so that your knee aligns up with that front leg, okay? So you should be creating a little diamond with your legs. Once you're in a nice comfortable position in that lunge, have your hands behind your head and you're gonna crunch to the side that the leg is, okay? Then come back up tall, other side, knee behind the front leg, crunch towards the leg that's in front of you, and then come all the way up, okay? So this one we're gonna get that balance through the legs, and then we're gonna stabilize as we've gotta go into that oblique crunch, okay? So it's good for the legs and good for the core. section is a bird dog. So setting up so that your knees are directly underneath your hips, your wrists are directly underneath your shoulders, so you're making a nice little tabletop position. You're going to go for opposite arm and leg here, okay? So it might take a bit of coordination. So take your time before you get going. So opposite arm and leg will lift up, and it just has to make a straight line, okay? You don't need to go into that hyperextension. Just keep it nice and long, and then bring it back to its starting position. So opposite arm and leg, back to the start. Opposite arm and leg, back to the start. Opposite arm and leg, back to the start. And you can challenge it more by trying to hold it for at least 2 seconds before you bring it back in, okay? The last exercise for the stability section is going to be a plank with leg lifts, okay? Now you can either do the plank on your hands with your wrists aligned with your shoulders, or on your elbows, still keeping the elbows aligned with your shoulders as best as you can, okay? Do what works for you. So set up in your plank position. Like I said, elbows aligned with your shoulders or hands aligned with your shoulders. Feet going behind you. The more apart they are, the easier it will be for your base of support. Otherwise, the more they are together, the more challenging it will be on your core, okay? So do what works for you. And then all you're gonna do is lift one leg up, trying to keep it straight, drop it back down. Lift the other leg up, drop it back down, okay? If you need to, you can drop to your knees and just hover one knee at a time, but ultimately try to give your toes a go, okay? first movement we're going to do for our flexibility section is a standing roll down, okay? Now you want to stand with your ankles, knees and hips aligned with each other, so just only hip width apart. Have soft knees if you've got quite weak hamstrings to help you out. And you're going to start from the top of the head, tuck the chin to the chest, then roll the shoulders, think upper back, middle back, lower back, reaching down as far as you can. Now it's okay if you can't touch the ground. If you need to, you can bend your knees to get down there. Otherwise, just keep trying to focus on lengthening out the hammies whilst you're down there. And then you're going to stack the spine back up. So rolling up one vertebrae at a time until you're all the way standing and the head's the last to come up. Now you can do this at your own pace. Go to where is most comfortable to you and just keep massaging through that spine as you articulate it up and down. The next movement for our flexibility section is a standing quad stretch. Now you can also do this lying on the ground if you prefer, if your balance isn't quite there. Otherwise, hold on to a structural surface if you are doing it standing but need a little bit of balance support. So what you're going to do is balance onto one leg, so bend that supporting leg for support. Grab onto your foot with your hand, and then you're just going to focus on trying to lengthen through the front of the leg. So it might mean that you bring the leg slightly behind you to feel that leg, or you bring your foot slightly closer towards your glute if you can. Do whatever works for you as long as you're feeling that big stretch up the front of the leg. Then obviously make sure halfway through the set you change to the other side, balancing on that leg and holding it for halfway through, and then relax out of the movement. If you are needing to do it lying down, just lay onto your side, have your legs long, bring that leg behind, and stretch is exactly the same in this position, okay? It just allows you to be a bit more supported. So do what works best for you. The next movement we're going to do for our flexibility section is going to be a deep lunge into a pigeon stretch. Okay, so start by sitting up in your deep lunge first. So have your ankle roughly under your knee, but it's okay if your knee tracks over. You're trying to focus on opening out those hip flexors, so pushing the hips forward. Then when you go into your pigeon stretch, you're going to drop the leg in front of you to kind of make like a little L shape. If you need to, you can keep the heel nice and close towards the leg if that's a little bit nicer on your range of flexibility. Otherwise, keep aiming to have that foot as far front as you can and focus on pushing that hip down, okay? Once you've held it for half of the duration, make sure that you then change into the other leg. So into that deep lunge to start off with, and then you're going to drop the leg down and go into that pigeon stretch. Okay, and just go to the range that works best for you. Next movement we're going to do for the flexibility section is just a seated hamstring stretch, okay? So you're just going to be seated, having your legs extended in front of you, try to have them as long as you possibly can, and then using your hands, start at your thighs and think of your upper body trying to come forward rather than just hunching your shoulders over. Try to think that you're trying to get your belly button towards your thighs first, okay? So keeping that chest proud. So start with hands on thighs, move to your knees, move to your shins, and just go as far as you can and just hold this position, okay? So it doesn't matter what point you go to, you'll feel the stretch at any point. So start onto the thighs, knees, shins, reach for the toes, around the heels. It depends where your flexibility level is, and just hold it there for the duration of the set. Next movement we're going to do is a butterfly into a V stretch. So starting with the butterfly, heels are clipped together, knees are out nice and wide. Try to move those feet as close to your pelvis as you can. It's okay if you can't, that's just what your range allows. Try to aim to grab onto the ankles rather than the toes, and then use your elbows to then push those knees out nice and wide. Now, once you've held this for a couple of seconds, then go into the V stretch. So when you extend the legs out, and then still keep focusing on leaning slightly forward, okay? So you'll start in that butterfly, pushing the knees out, hold for a few seconds, and then come out into that V, still trying to lean forward and hold for a couple of seconds. The last movement we're going to do for our flexibility section is a rollover. Now with this one, if you don't want to go all the way over, that's totally fine. Do what works best for your body and what is safest for you. If you want to do the half version, that's totally fine. Just let me know. So when you're going for your rollover, you want to think of articulating the spine. So rolling one vertebrae at a time until you're laying down, and then your legs are going to hover up above your hips and then over. And so you'll be looking your eyes towards your thighs, okay? And then gently roll through the spine, back down, legs above hips, and then down onto the ground. Okay, so always articulate the spine as you come down, bring the legs up and over, and then gently roll back down and come back up again. Cool. Well done guys, you've completed the MSF class. I hope you feel more mobile, more stable and more flexible. And enjoy the rest of your day. Bye guys.